I was a 24-year-old good-for-nothing mooch that lived at my parents' house. Well, that's what my father said to my mother in the bedroom late at night. Of course, maybe, if they didn't continue to give me a $50 allowance a week, I would have probably tried to find a job sooner than that. I really didn't feel right about accepting the money, but you have to be downright stupid to refuse free money. The next day, my mother asked me if I could at least start putting in applications. She was tired of defending me, and honestly, I was tired of listening to them argue. That afternoon, my mom drove me to the heart of downtown Nashville, Tennessee. She figured there were enough part-time opportunities for me. The first place I went into was a small candy shop called Rocket Fizz. The manager was nice enough, but she did tell me that they were fully covered in terms of staff. She said she would let me know if they ended up needing anyone else. After purchasing a couple of sweets, I walked out of the store and mindlessly walked around for a couple of minutes while shoving sour gummies in my mouth and taking drags off of my cigarette. I walked up to a crosswalk, and while waiting for the light to turn green, I saw a "Now hiring, no experience necessary" sign on a small white building called Cafe 1987. When I walked inside of the coffee shop, I looked around and saw that it wasn't really anything special. It looked like almost every single indie coffee shop out there. Small wooden tables, uncomfortable looking chairs, and the smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air. The barista behind the counter looked at me with a smile before handing me a menu and asking, "Would you like to try our mango smoothie? They're absolutely delicious and made with natural ingredients." I shook my head and said, "No, I saw the sign and I was wondering if you guys were still hiring." He looked uneasy for a second before asking, "Are you sure you don't want to try a mango smoothie? It's absolutely amazing to drink in this hot weather. It'll keep you healthy with all the vitamins inside. For today only, it's actually $3, so I highly recommend it." I shook my head again and asked if I could just have an application. At first, it looked like he was getting more and more disappointed. The more I looked at his face, the more I realized that it looked like he was getting older. His thick brown hair started to fall out and was replaced with frail white hair. I started to panic and put my hand on his shoulder and asked him if he was okay. "Are you absolutely sure you don't want a mango smoothie? It is the best for health and you will notice yourself getting younger." Quickly, I took a $5 out of my wallet and slammed it on the counter and nodded my head. The man let out a sigh, turned around, and started making the smoothie. Once he finished, he turned around and handed it to me. He looked young again, but he still had a nervous look on his face. I mean, it looked like the man was 5 seconds away from death. I took a small sip and gave him a nod. I was still scared out of my mind, and the only thing I wanted to do was get out. I grabbed the smoothie out of his hand and started walking out of the door when I heard him whisper, "I'm so sorry." I turned around and looked at him, but he was staring at me with a blank look on his face. I turned back around and tried leaving, but my hand kept sliding off of the door handle. Scared and frustrated, I shot my arm out as hard as I could towards the door, but a pain erupted deep inside of me. I fell to the ground and writhed in pain. Once the pain was gone, I looked back at him and told him to open the door. But he just kept staring at me and said, I can't. I would have left if I could. You can't either. It told me you couldn't." I took a deep breath, calmed myself down, and said, "Alright man, this was funny. I bought a smoothie, now let me out. Please don't make me call 911. He let out a lifeless chuckle before saying, Try it. Your body won't let you. While glaring at him, I took out my phone and dialed 911. I tried talking when a man answered the phone, but a pain erupted in my midsection. I still tried to speak, but words weren't coming out of my mouth. I could only let out a series of grunts. The man sighed and said, Alright man, it's actually a crime to call us when there isn't an emergency. Please do not call again or we will send an officer your way. He let out another aggravated sigh after I let out another grunt and disconnected the call. After a couple of seconds, the pain passed. I tried dialing 911 a couple more times, but I couldn't even force myself to dial the numbers out. The pain would just come back stronger and stronger. The last time I tried, it felt like my stomach was going to rip open. I could see my chest starting to poke out in random places. I ended up throwing my phone against the wall. My phone is broken. The barista was a nut job and didn't know how to leave. I sat on one of the chairs and looked out the window. A couple of people walked past the window, but every time I tried banging on the window to get them to help, the pain would come back and I would, once again, fall to the ground until it passed. The last thing I remember before I blacked out was the barista walking towards me, grabbing my head, saying, I'm sorry, for the second time, and slamming my head repeatedly against the wall. I woke up to the worst headache I have ever experienced and a whole new set of clothes on my body. I was in the same outfit the barista was wearing, a yellow shirt, blue jeans, white tennis shoes, and a solid green apron with Cafe 1987 written in the middle of it. My name, David, was sewn into the top right corner of the apron, and what seemed to be a small menu sat next to my right hand. Handbook for the Cafe 1987 employees was written on the front of it. Curious, I flipped it open and saw that only one thing was written in the middle of the left page. Today's special is hot cocoa, good for the soul. Will make your warm nights warmer. It will make you feel younger. The right side was completely blank. I slammed it shut and stood next to my new co-worker. I tried to speak to him a few times over the course of the day, but he never said anything back. He just lifelessly stared at me while I spoke to him. The day ended and the next day came. A new menu would be in my hand every morning. I didn't know where the menu came from. I even tried to stay up all night a couple of times to see who gave us the new menu. But each time, the pain would come back and I would fall asleep as the pain went away. My body started getting weaker. My bones started feeling more fragile. My movements became slower. I knew what was happening to me. My body was getting older. Minutes turned to days, days turned to weeks, and weeks turned to months. I lost track after the 8th month. My body was failing on me, but the other barista was completely fine. He kept drinking the drink of the day. I noticed something squirming around in my body. Sometimes it would be deep inside, mingling with my organs, while other times it would rest on top of my bones. Every time I did something that was deemed against the rules, the pain would come back, and I noticed that it was the cause of the pain. Don't ask me why I didn't die of starvation or thirst. Nothing made sense to me then or even now. I just know that I completely lost it yesterday. The thing was squirming a little more than usual, and I could feel every time it would move even an inch. Finally, it rested under the skin of my chest. I quickly grabbed a cloth napkin and put it in my mouth. I took my wallet out and grabbed my credit card out of my pocket and held it with my left hand. With a muffled scream, I grabbed the skin around the thing and pulled as hard as I could. Pain erupted from my tearing skin, as well as from whatever was in my body. I almost gave up halfway through, but I knew it was the last chance I had to live. I used my left hand to jam the credit card as hard as I could into my chest. After several excruciating seconds, I finally managed to make a tear in my chest. I held the thing down in my chest so it wouldn't be able to slide away and slammed the corner of the card into the exposed flesh. Once I got to a sizable gash, I threw the card on the ground and used both of my hands to rip off the rest of the skin around whatever the hell that thing was. As my skin tore free, the thing came with it, and I could finally breathe easy. I quickly got up and watched it slide out from underneath the torn off slab of skin. It was the same colour as the liquid that was in the cup I left on the table, the damn mango smoothie. I looked back at the barista and noticed, for the first time, every part of his exposed skin was moving ever so slightly. I wanted to help him, but I knew it was impossible. Without a second thought, I ran out of the door and didn't stop running until I was a good distance away. I felt something vibrate in my pocket, and I almost had a heart attack right there. I thought it was back inside of me, but it was just my phone. The phone I threw against the wall and broke. Nervously, I answered the phone, and my mum asked where I wanted her to pick me up since it was 3 hours since she dropped me off. I told her I would take a cab back home. I walked around for about 30 minutes. It felt like it had been an eternity since I was outside, and it felt great. I walked into a McDonald's and walked into a restroom. I looked in the mirror and saw that I was no longer older. I was also wearing the same clothes I was wearing before I went into the cafe. Slowly, I lifted my shirt and saw that my chest was back to normal, except a big circle-shaped scar. I ate a cheeseburger, caught a cab, and sat back while we drove home. We drove past the cafe, and I noticed that everything was the same. The same tables, same uncomfortable chairs, and the same miserable-looking barista. But the sign was different. It was now called Cafe 1988.